Here are 3 odd Asperger symptoms that you didn't even know. All that's coming up. Hey guys, welcome back to the AspieWorld. My name is Dan. I have Asperger Syndrome, ADHD, OCD and dyslexia, and I make weekly videos on this type of content. So I know if you're new around here and you want to learn more, remember to hit that subscribe button by clicking the notification bell down below. And if you're watching over on Facebook, be sure to give this page a like and a follow to see more videos just like this one. Boom, let's get into it. Woo! Welcome back, Thinking Differently fam, where we think differently daily. What is going on, different thinkers? Oh man, it's been a hot minute. I feel like it's just like, you know, the year's just gone away with me. Anyway, regardless of that, if you would like to download my free PDF book on autism hacks, you can do, and the link in the description, link up here in the card and on the end slate, you'll be able to get your hands on my gift from me to you, which is super awesome. So with that being said, if you want to follow me on Instagram and Twitter, please do that now, and let's get into this video. Okay, so I wanted to do a video talking about like odd Asperger symptoms, because there's I do a lot of videos on traits and symptoms, and I just want to put a disclaimer out there. The reason I use the word symptoms is so you guys can understand what I'm talking about. In actual fact, people on the autism spectrum don't use the word symptoms, because symptomatic things technically mean that they are like curable conditions, where we all know that autism is not a curable condition, so it's not really a term we use, symptoms. We actually use traits or characteristics or personality traits. So that being said, I hope I haven't offended anybody. Let's get on with the video. Okay, cool. So I decided I'll write down 3 of the most interestingly odd kind of characteristics of an autism spectrum disorder, like Asperger syndrome and the traits of Asperger syndrome, but some that people probably wouldn't even think are like Asperger's symptom traits. Or well, we'll get into it. So the first one I'm going to talk about here is using senses more. Now, autism is a communication issue. It's kind of, it impacts the brain in communicative ways where like, you know, it impacts like the communication from you to the outside world, which also includes things like sensory processing disorder. Now, sensory processing disorder is where a person is affected by other sensory stimuli in a way that neurotypical people or non-autistic people would be. So for instance, a certain word or a certain noise could really trigger someone on the autism spectrum. Well, somebody who's neurotypical wouldn't really be triggered by this, and certain smells could cause a meltdown for someone on the autism spectrum. Well, the person who is not on the autism spectrum probably wouldn't have an issue with those smells. So you can see how things like that are impactful. Now, in terms of using senses more, the fact that, that communication impacts the autism brain is that it actually impacts social and communicative aspects, where if you're in a social situation, people on the autism spectrum would have a really difficult time keeping up with a lot of social conventions and social situations, not knowing when to talk, what's the right time, what's the right social kind of construct here. All that stuff can be difficult. Therefore, other senses are heightened, which is kind of how sensory processing disorder comes into all this. So the use of senses more is something like, you may notice that someone on the autism spectrum may like smell everything. Like if you pass them your phone, they might smell your phone, or they may you know, smell like just random objects, like they might smell their clothes or smell their hands. Things like that, like using a sense differently to what a typical person would, because neurotypical people don't typically use their senses like that. They kind of just use them as a, you know, as a given. You know, they take everything in a different light. But people in the autism spectrum have heightened senses in certain areas, and this actually is one of the most interesting characteristics that I thought would be very interesting to put in here as an odd characteristic of Asperger syndrome. Okay guys, moving on to odd Asperger's symptom number 2, just for you, here goes. Okay, so this one I kind of dubbed anxiously snappy. That's a bit of a weird kind of term for this, but because Asperger syndrome comes with a lot of like social anxiety and general anxiety disorder, or GDA, there are kind of like byproducts of the fact that anxiousness causes a bit of a rift within ASD, and ASD is autism spectrum disorder. Now, a lot of the time, people with ASD, like Asperger syndrome and such, become really anxiously snappy, where if you're in a situation where the person on the autism spectrum is maybe under a bit of stress or a bit of strain, or they're in a situation that could be triggering to them, like it could be it could be a busy public space, it could be out in a restaurant, it could be like maybe in a meeting room with a lot of people, and so that person who is on the autism spectrum will start feeling super anxious, and that anxiety kind of builds a bit like a fire within them, and it kind of starts raging, and then that fire can cause them to be very snappy and kind of like, oh, Because they're trying their best to kind of keep in with it. They're trying their best to keep level on it, but the anxiety is kind of like really rushing in, and so they kind of start blocking out things that aren't important to vital survival, because that's what anxiety does to you. And so of course things like, hey, you know, Dan, would you like another cup of tea? I'm like, no, leave me alone, get away from me, you know, like there's biscuits over there, I don't care, you know. So being snappy in a situation that is typically an anxious situation for somebody is a very odd but interesting symptom of Asperger syndrome. Now I like to think of that one as kind of like one of my my alarm systems. When I know about that, I'm like, oh my goodness, I'm getting so triggered, and I start raging, and I know that that situation is going to cause me to have a meltdown, which is very, very interesting, because I feel like if I don't act on that situation at the moment in time and take myself away from it, then you know, worse things can happen. And I'd just like to say, guys, that I have started a premium autism membership called Level Up Autism. If you'd like to join this specific autism membership subscription group where we drop courses and materials and live group sessions every single month, there will be a link in the description down below where you can actually register. If it's not an open period for enrollment, you can register your interest and we'll email you as soon as it's open, because we only allow in 200 people at any one time. But I'd love to see you there and in the group and be a part of what we're building here. That'll be super, super awesome. Okay guys, so we're going to move on to the odd symptom number 3. Now this is an odd symptom of Asperger syndrome, which is actually something that is quite common between people on the spectrum, but people who are neurotypical don't see this as being an autism spectrum trait or issue, because they don't see it in the same way as people on the autism spectrum do. And this one is object relationships. Right, so let me just back up a bit. I don't mean that like you have a relationship with your pencil where you and your pencil would run off to the hills and get married and live happily ever after and you'd have tiny pencil babies. Well, of course not. That's the most ridiculous thing I've ever said. But what I mean is that when you have an object, someone on the autism spectrum will see an object and know that this object has personality, and that personality resonates a relationship, and that relationship could be that it has some kind of affinity, and you have affinity for it. And so, put this into perspective, people on the autism spectrum may have a difficult time throwing out old shoes because they have a relationship, a long-lasting relationship with these shoes. You know, they've done them a year, they've been through loads of stuff, they've been on holiday with them, they've been to every business meeting, but now it's time for you to part ways with these shoes and throw them in the bin and buy new ones. And it's like losing a friend, or like a dog dying or something, and it can be quite distressing and quite upsetting. And object relationships is a very real thing, and people on the autism spectrum do have this affinity for inanimate objects and objects that are non-intelligent or non-intellectual. And so it's definitely something that's very interesting, and something that I notice quite a bit between people on the spectrum, and they have a hard time doing things, which is why people on the autism spectrum may seem like hoarders. Like they'll hoard loads and loads of stuff and collect like the most bizarre things, because they'll start to have affinity for those things, and those things will become part of them. There'll be like this relationship between them and a cup collection or Mickey Mouse clock collection or something ridiculous. Like, I don't know, it could be anything, right? But the idea is that that person has affinity for it, and therefore their relationship with it is like a bond, if you will. So that is super, super interesting. Guys, if you think this video is interesting, please share it on Facebook and Twitter. And as always, if you haven't already, give it a thumbs up, leave me a comment with your thoughts. I read every single one, and subscribe if you haven't. I'll see you next time, guys. Peace.